All right, so I did indicate a bit earlier on that we'll be crossing to SABC News reporter Tumelo Machoho, of course, who will continue to give us coverage outside that suspected military camp in White River in Mpumalanga that was discovered by the community there and reporting it, of course, to police. So following that discovery of the suspected military camp in Mpumalanga, we'll take a look also, at recent raids that have happened, drug busts and kidnappings. Let's chat a bit about this now and welcome Security Risk Analyst Andy Grudko to get some insights on these developments. Andy, a very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for making time to speak to us. And that's exactly where I want to start with regard to what is suspected to be this military camp, which was discovered in Mpumalanga. I guess the question we should all be asking ourselves at this moment is, how did intelligence services not pick this up?
Well, good morning and good morning to your viewers. My apologies if my voice sounds a bit croaky. I'm just getting over the flu here. That's an extremely important point. Of course, the intelligence services are not going to tell us really what they know or how long they've known about this for. But military and paramilitary training camps are nothing new in South Africa. We've had them for literally decades. Even in the apartheid era, there were such camps that were set up. The political implications of this one are quite interesting because of the political dynamics that are going on up in Libya, which of course is a very oil-rich African country and has been in turmoil with various people trying to seize power. At the moment, there are two political groupings in Libya. They're divided between the East and the West. So they have two presidents. And my suspicion is that this group of men were probably training in South Africa because they were contemplating doing something in Libya, which the government up there would not have approved of. So they looked for an alternative training venue. Why South Africa? I don't know. Our terrain and our conditions are very different to those of desertified Libya. Yeah. But military basics are military basics. So I suppose it would make sense that they could come here if it was economically viable for them.
I mean, this is certainly incredibly concerning. We'll hear from the top brass of police a bit later on this afternoon. They're expected to be at that particular site. We'll certainly get more details about what they know at this particular point. But from where I'm sitting, many are asking the question whether this is a threat to national security. How did they get here? We understand it's a suspected illegal military training base, but that certainly is not what is allowed to happen in South Africa. You can't come and train here, even if you want to be involved in some kind of political situation, if I may, in your own country. Is this a threat to national security? Because clearly they're here. There are so many that have been arrested. We don't know the full extent or for how long this military training camp was there for. So many questions that still need to be answered.
Yeah, well, we do have specific legislation which deals with foreign military assistance. That came in, I can't recall exactly, about 15, 20 years ago when South Africa was starting to send mercenaries into various parts of Africa. Yeah. And legislation was brought in to tighten up on that. And you will hear different terms being used now, such as private military contractors, and there are other terms for what you could call additional security, even at military bases. I mean, in South Africa, we have private security at military bases and at police stations. So there's nothing unusual about people coming from overseas here to train as security officers. And that is carefully controlled. We have SERA, the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority, who have regulations in this regard. Yeah. And the training is quite carefully controlled. It falls under the SACWA legislation. So there are various modules for training. And that will include live firearms training, of course, and it will include tactical training. Now, this is where you might have a difference, of course, because the tactical training for a police officer or a security officer is very different to that of a person who's involved in a military engagement. But with the proliferation of private military contractors, and we're still sending them from South Africa to hotspots around the world, it's not unusual for there to be a fuzzy line, a crossover between the legal training of security or private military staff and what would be an illegal paramilitary force sent to conduct a coup.
But what then needs to be done? Because, look, I'm really speaking from a point of not really having a full understanding as yet, because we're yet to hear from police a little bit later on this afternoon. They're expected in that area. We'll clearly get more details on what the situation was there. But, I mean, what does this say about the intelligence of South Africa to pick up something like this? There are some accusations sometimes that South Africa tends to be more reactive than actually trying to put the right intelligence in place to ensure that we deal with some of these aspects. I'm not saying, of course, that intelligence, everything that they do, they should come to the media or to anyone and say, this is the operation that we're working on at the moment. That's not how intelligence works. But in this particular instance, what we understand is that community members had actually alerted police to what was taking place there.
Yes, well, that's probably what happened. In most of the rural communities where these kind of training camps can be set up, and some of them are completely legal, they are accredited and they have all the correct safety and training facilities in place, but the local population will be aware of this. And certainly if you have 95 Libyans, 95 foreigners turning up in our country and perhaps going to socialize or something like that, they're noticeable that the local community might become a little bit concerned. Now, I don't want to be xenophobic about this, but let's assume that some Americans, for example, decided to come to South Africa for training. And we have trained American military here last year. You'll probably be aware of that. And we've had British troops come here about 3 years ago to do military training with our forces. We also had, if I recall, about 3 years ago, I think it was Chinese pilots down on the coast, on the Cape Coast, having training exercises. Now, those people are here for a considerable amount of time. The local community are aware of them. And if they've done all the correct paperwork and they've declared why they're coming to the country, that they're entering legally and they have the correct visas, which the Department of Home Affairs would be concerned about, there's actually nothing wrong with it. So, yes, the eyes and the ears of the community are very important to our intelligence services. It's not all James Bond characters infiltrating with groups of foreigners who come in. It can be as simple as someone at the local spaza shop saying, hey, this was interesting. There were 3 coachloads of people, none of whom spoke English, who have now gone to one particular farm down the road. And then the intelligence people will go and have a quiet look to see what's going on.
Yeah. Part of our team of producers here, I do understand that there was a message put out to the Department of Home Affairs to get a sense of exactly that. But all reference was made to the South African Police Service, who are of course, investigating the matter at this particular stage. They will speak a bit later on. But where should the blame be put here? It could be, of course, we don't know yet. We're yet to hear. I'm sure that the police will speak on whether they're here legally or illegally. What is the status regarding the presence of those Libyans here? That will get much later on. But where should we be placing the blame here? The sense that I'm getting is that there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable with what has really happened, and they certainly have cause for that. And can we link some of these groups? And I don't want to suggest that indeed it is so. Information is still very sketchy at this particular stage until later on today. But do we link these groups to organized crime that has been taking place? Or am I jumping the gun here?
All right, well, there are a couple of factors involved here. As I said, if some American security staff had come to this country, they would have applied for the correct visas based on training. There would be a proper schedule set up for training. Everything would have been, I wouldn't say in the open, because it would be commercially confidential how they do the training, etc. But that would not raise any flags. Now, to do that, we had an instance about 4 or 5 years ago where we brought a group of people from the United Kingdom through here for training because they could not have private firearms training in the UK, because you cannot have private ownership of handguns and assault rifles, etc., in the UK. So we were part of facilitating bringing them here. And it was a fairly straightforward procedure to organize a certified training program and to get the visas issued. I think it took about 2 weeks. And those people came here legally, they did their training, and then they left. There was no threat to the country, and there was no reason why anybody should get upset about it. There was nothing illegal.
Yeah.
What could be the case here, and we're still waiting to hear from the authorities, would be, was the correct procedure followed for these people to obtain visas to come here to do legal training in accordance with the various acts that cover it.
Yeah.
If that was the case, I would say there's really no risk to South Africa because they will be returning home to do whatever it is they're doing. There could be a political implication if the organizations that brought them out here did not go through the correct diplomatic channels. I bring up, for instance, the ANC's support of the Palestinians at the moment. The Libyans are also going through a very difficult time politically, and it would depend on which group these 95 people attended to. There's a prime minister in Libya, his name's something like Dibia, who, as far as I understand, would not be given political sanction in this country to send people for training. If it was him, then there could be political implications. If it was the other president, I'm afraid I can't remember what his name is at the moment, there would not be political implications.
Yeah. Andy, thank you very much indeed. We do appreciate your time. Andy Grudko, who is a security risk analyst, thank you very much for your insights indeed here on the SABC News Channel.